that we are all in the same house growing up and the same story is never the same. Just saying. So a lot of this is in repeating, and no, we've never seen or heard what each of us were going to say before today. So it's kind of weird that it's all the same. But anyway, here it goes. Well, as most know, she was dealt a tough hand to figure out. She lost her parents and her husband in a matter of minutes and was left with 4 young kids to raise all by herself, which I have always told her she did a fantastic job. She instilled good morals, good values, taught us how to work hard, and more importantly, how to play hard. The dirtier you were, the better that day was. She taught us a strong work ethic, how to love unconditionally, and to be kind. And most importantly, our love and faith with Jesus. She taught us by example how to embrace the suck, and that we can do hard things no matter what they are. Looking back now, I realize she was a pretty smart woman. She taught me the meaning of the word hot at a very young age. Mom was always happy to have us kids in the kitchen with her, helping her. I remember she was baking a wedding cake and took a rather large bottom layer out of the oven. I watched in awe as she took this gigantic cake out of the oven. She then flipped this cake out of the pan in one swift moment onto the cooling rack. And then she put the pan on top of the stove. She looked into my wide little eyes and said, "Don't touch that, that's hot." As she picked up her cake and walked over to the table where she was cooling it. She no sooner turned her back to me, and I thought to myself, what does she know? As both of my little hands landed on the bottom of that pan, and guess what? She was right. As I was crying, she said, "Well, why did you do that?" I replied through my tears, "I don't know." Mom also taught us about being green and reusing stuff long before being green was a hot trend. Her favorite thing to reuse were paper bags from Piggly Wiggly.
Oh.
I still got some.
You don't use them like she did. She would, whenever we got into trouble, she would sit us down at the table, cut a bag open, and make us write. As I was lipping off to Mom one day, she takes me over to the table, sits me down with my bag and pen, and made me write, "I will not backtalk my mother." So in my anger, I wrote the phrase, and it was big, and it took up the entire bag. And I said, "There, I'm done." She walks over, looks at my work and says, "Now write it 99 more times so I can read every one." I asked for another bag and she said, "You already have one." One year for Christmas, she was just tired of wrapping all the presents in wrapping paper. So, out come the brown bags and the number system. Well, Jerry, being number 4, fourth born, is handed this beautiful brown bag with a pretty red bow and the number 4 on it. As he opened the bag and peered into the bag, he looked up with a puzzled look on his face and said, "Mom, I don't think this is for number 4." As he pulled a pretty nightgown out of the bag, to which my mother said, "Nope, that's for number 2. Even though times were sometimes tough and we didn't have designer labels on our clothes, we always had exactly what we needed. Every Christmas we would wake up to a pile of presents. My all-time favorite memory was the year that she got us good. We being typical kids, we got up on Christmas before the sun was even up. And this was usually about hour or so after Mom went to bed. This one particular year, she got all the wrapping done, all the presents under the tree. The tree was lit and pretty and twinkly. As she said to herself with a smile on her face, "Ah, Santa's been here." That smile was soon followed by her best idea, as she got that sparkle in her eye. Santa's been here. She started a pot of coffee, turned up the music, and woke us kids up. Santa's here, Santa's here, Santa's been here. She got us all up and out of bed, mind you, 2:30 in the morning. We all rolled downstairs half asleep as we started to open all the gifts and our stockings. And by the time we finished, we were all wide awake and excited. To that, Mom said, "Good night, I'm going to bed now." And we were all like, "What?" She said it was truly the best payback for us kids waking her up every year at dark 30. Mom was pretty creative, whether she was making meals or figuring out Halloween costumes. In the 80s, she went through her crafting and dried flower stage. You could be anyone sitting in the passenger seat of her car, and she would just randomly pull the car over and say something like, "Oh, those are pretty. Will you go get me some?" As she whips a pair of scissors out of her glove box. I happened to be a passenger in her car one day. As she suddenly pulls over, whips out the scissors and says, "Go get me some of the purple ones." I go traipse out into the knee-high weeds, bend over to start cutting the purple weeds, and she yells out the window, "No, not those, those over there." When I get back in the car, I ask, "What the heck?" She says with a giggle, "We're building memories." And that we did. Many memories were created throughout our lives because of her. She lived with passion and loved us kids and her grandkids completely. And we all knew it and felt it every day. And if you didn't know it, it was your own fault. She was never shy with passing out a hug, and her hugs were truly the best. She had a quirky sense of humor and a huge heart. She was loved by so many, and she will be deeply missed by all, especially her smile and her warm hugs. And she did tell me, I'm her favorite.